Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stared at the star map. The old salvage ship Starbound was running low on fuel, and they needed a big score soon. His crew of 3 had been searching for valuable scrap for weeks without finding anything useful. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," said Lisa Grant from the pilot's seat. She was young but skilled, and Jake trusted her instincts. "There's a dead system about 2 days from here. The charts say it used to be called Sol." Carlos Martinez looked up from his engineering station. "Sol, that's where humans used to live, right? Before they all died out." Jake nodded. "Yeah, about 3,000 years ago. The whole species just vanished. Nobody knows what happened to them." He paused, thinking about the credits they could make from human technology. Even broken human stuff was worth good money to collectors. Set course for Sol, Jake decided. If we're lucky, we might find some old human tech that the big corporations missed. The journey to Sol took 2 days. As they got closer, Lisa noticed something odd on her sensors. "Captain, this system isn't as dead as the charts say. I'm reading some kind of energy signatures." Jake frowned. "Energy signatures? From what? I don't know. They're very faint, like something is sleeping but not completely turned off." When they reached the outer edge of the Sol system, Carlos gasped at his readings. "Captain, you need to see this. There are structures everywhere. Huge ones. Hidden in the asteroid belt, buried in the moons, even inside some of the planets." Jake studied the scanner data. The structures were massive, bigger than anything he had ever seen. They seemed to be made of materials that barely showed up on sensors, like they were designed to stay hidden. "Let's start with that moon," Jake said, pointing to Europa. "If we're going to find anything valuable, it'll be there." Lisa carefully flew the Starbound toward Europa. As they got closer, they could see that the moon's surface was covered in strange patterns. What looked like natural ice formations were actually carefully hidden doors and passages. "I'm reading a breathable atmosphere inside those structures," Carlos reported. "An artificial gravity. Whatever built this is still working after 3,000 years." Jake made his decision. "We're going in. Lisa, find us a way inside. Carlos, get the suits ready, just in case." They found an opening near Europa's south pole. It was disguised to look like a natural crack in the ice, but their sensors showed it was actually a perfectly engineered entrance. Lisa flew the ship through carefully, and they found themselves in a vast underground chamber. The chamber was enormous, stretching 4 kilometers in every direction. Along the walls were thousands of glass containers, each one glowing with a soft blue light. Inside the containers, they could see human figures floating in some kind of liquid. "Are they alive?" Lisa whispered. Before anyone could answer, one of the containers began to drain. The liquid flowed out, and the human figure inside began to move. Jake and his crew watched in amazement as the person stepped out of the container. The man was tall and strong-looking, with short brown hair and sharp blue eyes. He wore a simple gray uniform that seemed to adjust itself to fit him perfectly. When he saw the 3 strangers, he didn't seem surprised. "I am Commander Alex Turner," the man said, in perfect galactic common language. "Thank you for activating the beacon. We have been waiting for someone to find us." Jake found his voice. "Waiting? You've been waiting for 3,000 years." Alex smiled. "Not waiting. Preparing. We knew this day would come." Suddenly, lights began turning on throughout the chamber. More containers started draining, and more humans began stepping out. Each person moved with purpose, as if they had been expecting this moment. "I don't understand," Carlos said. "Everyone thinks humans died out long ago. The galactic government has records showing that your species couldn't survive in space." Alex's smile became colder. "That's what we wanted them to think. We realized that the galaxy was not ready for humanity. The other species were too aggressive, too ready to fight, so we chose to step back and let them think we were gone. But why? Lisa asked. Why hide for so long? Because we needed time to grow, time to learn, time to become something more than we were. Alex gestured to the awakening humans around them. For 3,000 years, we have been sleeping while our machines worked. They have been building, learning, improving everything we knew about science and technology. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. What kind of improvements? Before Alex could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the chamber. A voice spoke from hidden speakers. Commander Turner, we have detected alien vessels approaching the system. Korthani Empire Patrol Fleet, 12 ships. Alex's expression didn't change. Understood. Begin full awakening protocols for all facilities. It seems our return will not be as quiet as we hoped. He turned to Jake and his crew. I'm afraid your salvage operation has just become something much more significant. You have just witnessed the awakening of humanity. The galaxy is about to learn that we never truly left. Throughout the chamber, more and more humans were waking up. Each one moved with the same calm confidence as Alex. Jake realized that these weren't just people who had been sleeping. These were soldiers, scientists, and leaders who had been waiting for this exact moment. What happens now? Jake asked. Alex walked to a control panel that had appeared from the wall. Now we remind the galaxy why they should have left us alone. Computer, status report on all Sol system defenses. All systems operational. Commander, defensive network is at full readiness. Estimated time to complete awakening of all personnel, 6 hours. Jake looked at his crew members. They had come here looking for scrap metal. Instead, they had discovered that humanity had never died. They had been sleeping, growing stronger, and preparing for their return. As more alarms sounded and reports came in of alien ships entering the system, Jake realized that the galaxy was about to change forever. Humanity was awake, and they were nothing like the weak species that had disappeared 3,000 years ago. Alex looked at the 3 salvagers. You may want to stay close to us. The next few hours are going to be very interesting. Outside, the first alien patrol ships were about to discover that the Sol system was no longer empty. Humanity had returned, and they were ready for whatever the galaxy could throw at them. Admiral Keth Varenis of the Korthani Empire stared at the report on his desk. According to his patrol fleet commander, the dead human system of Sol was showing signs of activity. The admiral laughed and threw the report aside. Humans, he muttered. They've been extinct for 3,000 years. Captain Morvain is seeing ghosts. On the other side of the galaxy, High Counselor Zara Velix of the Zeleth Confederation received a similar report. She too dismissed it as sensor errors or smuggler activity. Humans were weak creatures who couldn't even survive their first steps into space. But in the Sol system, humanity was far from extinct. Commander Alex Turner stood in the main control room of the Europa facility, watching as reports came in from across the solar system. Everywhere, humans were waking up from their long sleep. Status report, Colonel Bradley, Alex said to a woman with short red hair who had just arrived from the Mars facilities. Colonel Kate Bradley looked at her data pad. All outer planet installations are coming online. The Jupiter moon bases are fully operational. Saturn's rings are showing defensive grid activation, and the asteroid belt installations are reporting ready status. Alex nodded. What about the new technology? How are the test pilots adapting? Better than expected, sir. Lieutenant Carter's squadron completed their first test flights this morning. The new fighters are performing beyond our original design specs. In a hangar bay on Titan, Lieutenant Sam Carter was indeed testing humanity's new
What?
These weren't ordinary ships. As Sam's fighter accelerated, it seemed to flicker in and out of normal space. The ship could phase between dimensions, making it nearly impossible to hit. Control. This is amazing, Sam reported over the radio. I can see the enemy ships, but they can't see me. It's like I'm flying through a different layer of reality. Back on Europa, Jake Morrison and his crew were trying to understand what they had stumbled into. Carlos was studying the human technology with wonder, while Lisa was learning about the defensive systems from a helpful human technician. I still don't understand, Jake said to Alex. If you've been here all along, why didn't you contact the galactic government? Why let everyone think you were dead? Alex led them to a large window that looked out into space. Because we learned something important about the galaxy, Jake. It's not a safe place for peaceful species. The Korthini Empire conquers everything they can. The Zelith Confederation enslaves weaker races. The Vex Collective turns everyone into mindless drones. So you decided to hide. We decided to prepare. We knew that one day, we would need to defend ourselves. So we built, we researched, and we grew stronger while the galaxy forgot about us. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent announcement. All personnel, this is Admiral Hayes. We have confirmed alien vessels entering the outer system. Korthini Patrol Fleet, led by Captain Nex Morvain, aboard the dreadnought Overlord's Wrath. They are demanding our surrender. Alex smiled grimly. Perfect. It's time to show them what 3,000 years of preparation can accomplish. Captain Nex Morvain was confident as his 12-ship patrol fleet approached the inner Sol system. Even if there were a few human survivors hiding in the asteroid belt, they would be no match for Korthoni military might. All ships, maintain attack formation, Morvain commanded. Sensors show only minimal activity. This will be over quickly. What the Korthani fleet didn't know was that they were already being watched. Hidden sensors throughout the solar system were tracking their every movement, and waiting for them near Earth was a single human ship, Captain Ryan. Blake sat in the command chair of the escort vessel, Defiant. His ship was small, compared to the Korthoni dreadnought, but size wasn't everything. The Defiant was equipped with technology that would have seemed like magic to the old humanity. Captain Blake, came the voice of Admiral Hayes over the radio. You are clear to engage. Show them what we've learned. Ryan smiled. Understood, Admiral. Defiant moving to intercept. The Korthoni sensors detected the human ship approaching. Captain Morvain laughed when he saw how small it was. One ship. They're sending one tiny ship against my entire fleet. But as the Defiant got closer, strange things began to happen. The Korthoni weapons fired at the human ship, but their energy beams seemed to bend around it. The human ship's armor glowed with a strange light, and any damage it took seemed to repair itself instantly. What kind of technology is this? Morvain demanded. His question was answered when the Defiant fired back. The human weapons didn't just destroy the Korthoni ships. They seemed to make them stop existing entirely. One moment a Korthoni cruiser was there. The next moment there was nothing but empty space. Impossible, Morvain screamed. Nothing can just erase matter like that. But the human ship was doing exactly that. It moved through space in ways that defied physics, appearing and disappearing at will. The Korthani fleet, despite having 12 ships against one, was being completely destroyed. In 14 minutes, it was over. Only one Korthoni ship remained, and it was already turning to flee. Captain Morvain's dreadnought was badly damaged, and his crew was in panic. Ryan Blake opened a communication channel to the fleeing ship. Tell your superiors that humanity has returned. Tell them we claim no territory beyond our home system. But tell them that anyone who enters soul space without permission will be destroyed. The surviving Korthani ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying news of humanity's return to the galaxy. On Europa, Alex Turner received the battle report with satisfaction. Excellent work, Captain Blake. Phase 1 is complete. Jake Morrison was staring at the tactical display in shock. You destroyed 11 warships in 14 minutes. How is that possible? Jake, during our long sleep, we didn't just improve our technology. We learned to think about the universe in new ways. We discovered that the laws of physics are more flexible than most species realize. What does that mean? Alex gestured to the display showing the human defensive grid. It means that we can do things that other species think are impossible. We can bend space, manipulate time, and even alter the basic forces that hold matter together. General Patricia Hayes appeared on the main screen. She was an older woman with gray hair and steel-gray eyes. Commander Turner, prepare for full system activation. I'm sending an ultimatum to all galactic powers. They have 72 hours to acknowledge our right to exist in peace. And if they don't, Alex asked, then we remind them why they should have left us alone. Across the galaxy, news of the Corthony fleet's destruction was spreading. The three major powers were beginning to realize that humanity's return was not just a minor inconvenience. It was a threat to everything they had built. Admiral Varenis was no longer laughing. High Counselor Velox was calling emergency meetings, and the Vex Collective was analyzing the battle data with growing concern. Humanity had been gone for 3,000 years. Now they were back, and they were nothing like the weak species that had disappeared. They had used their time wisely, and they were ready for whatever the galaxy could throw at them. In the Sol system, more humans were waking up every hour. Scientists, soldiers, engineers, and leaders who had been preparing for this moment for 3 millennia. They had slept while their machines worked, building defenses and developing technologies that would have seemed impossible to their ancestors. Now, the galaxy would learn what humanity had become, and Jake Morrison, who had come looking for scrap metal, realized he had witnessed the beginning of a new age. The storm was gathering, and humanity was ready for it. Admiral Keth Varonis stood in the war room of the Corthone Empire's military headquarters. Around him were representatives from the galaxy's 3 major powers. For the first time in centuries, old enemies were working together. The human threat, Israel Vornis said, his voice grim. We lost 11 ships in 14 minutes. Their technology is beyond anything we've seen. High Counselor Zara Velox nodded. The Zealoth Confederation agrees. Our analysis of the battle data shows weapons that ignore our shields and armor that repairs itself. This cannot be allowed to continue. The third representative was different from the others. Drone Prime 7 of the Vex Collective spoke in a mechanical voice. The collective finds human advancement, ... interesting. We wish to study their technology. We will add their distinctiveness to our own. First we have to defeat them, Voronus said. I propose a joint fleet. 10,000 ships from all 3 powers. The largest military force in galactic history. Velox smiled coldly. The humans cannot fight the entire galaxy. No matter how advanced they are still just one species on one world. Fleet Admiral Grix Thelonious was chosen to lead the combined armada. He was a veteran of a dozen wars and had never lost a battle. As he looked at the massive fleet assembling at the edge of Corthony space, he felt confident. 10,000 ships, he said to his staff, against one human system. This will be the shortest war in galactic history. But in the Sol system, humanity was preparing for exactly this kind of attack. Dr. Amanda Foster worked day and night in laboratories hidden beneath Earth's surface. She was developing weapons that would make the galaxy's combined fleet seem like toys. Status report, Dr. Foster, said Major Ben Richards as he entered the lab. He was in charge of the system's defensive installations. The reality anchors. Already, Major. We can deploy them throughout the solar system within hours. Once they're active, we'll be able to control the basic forces of physics and local space. Ben nodded. And the planet-side defenses. Earth itself has been turned into a weapon. The atmospheric processors can create energy fields that extend into space, and the gravitational manipulators can move asteroids like bullets. On Luna, Commander Susan Brooks was coordinating the defensive grid. The moon had been completely rebuilt during humanity's sleep. What looked like a natural satellite was actually a massive fortress. All stations report ready, she said to her staff. The alien fleet is 3 days out. By the time they arrive, every human in the system will be awake and ready. Jake Morrison was still trying to understand what he had stumbled into. He stood with Alex Turner on the observation deck of the Europa facility, watching as human ships moved through space around them. Alex, I've been thinking about what you said, about the laws of physics being flexible. What does that actually mean? Alex pointed to one of the human ships outside. As they watched, the ship seemed to fold in on itself and then appear somewhere else entirely. It means we've learned to think about the universe differently, Jake. Most species see space and time as fixed. We've learned to see them as tools. Tools. Watch. Alex pressed a button on his control panel. Suddenly, the asteroid they were on seemed to shift. Through the window, Jake could see that Europa was now in a completely different position relative to Jupiter. We moved the entire moon, Jake asked in amazement. We moved through space-time itself. The moon never actually moved from its orbit. We just took a shortcut through dimensions that other species don't know exist. The alien armada reached the edge of the Sol system exactly when predicted. Fleet Admiral Thelonious looked at his tactical display with satisfaction. 10,000 ships in perfect formation, representing the combined might of 3 galactic powers. Begin the assault, he ordered. All ships, advance on the human homeworld. But as the fleet moved deeper into the system, strange things began to happen. Some ships suddenly found themselves millions of kilometers away from where they were supposed to be. Others reported that their weapons were firing backwards, hitting their own fleet instead of the enemy. What's happening? Thelonious demanded. Sir, our sensors are showing impossible readings. It's like space itself is fighting against us. The Admiral stared at his display in confusion. His ships were scattered across the system, and none of them were where they were supposed to be. Some had simply vanished entirely. Then the human response began. On Luna, Commander Brooks activated the defensive grid. Around the moon, space seemed to ripple like water. The ripples spread outward, and any alien ship they touched simply ceased to exist. Direct hit on Sector 7, reported one of her technicians. 200 alien ships neutralized. Continue firing, Brooks ordered. Show them what happens when they threaten our home. Dr. Foster's reality anchors were working perfectly. Throughout the solar system, the basic forces of physics were being controlled by human technology. Gravity flowed like a river, carrying alien ships into the sun. Energy weapons curved back on themselves, destroying the ships that fired them. Major Richards watched from Earth as the planet's defenses activated. The entire atmosphere began to glow with energy, and beams of pure force lanced out into space. Each beam found its target with perfect accuracy, turning massive alien battleships into expanding clouds of gas. Earth defense grid is fully operational, he reported. All targets in range are being eliminated. Fleet Admiral Thelonious watched in horror as his massive fleet was being destroyed by an enemy he couldn't even see. His 10,000 ships were being picked off one by weapons that didn't seem to follow any known laws of physics. Retreat, he finally ordered. All ships, fall back to minimum safe distance. But there was no safe distance. The human weapons could reach across the entire solar system. Ship after ship was destroyed as they tried to flee. The proud armada that had entered Sol system was being reduced to scrap metal in the middle of the chaos. A single human ship approached the alien flagship. It was Captain Ryan Blake in the Defiant, the same ship that had destroyed the Corthoni patrol fleet. Admiral Thelonious, Blake said over the radio. You have 10 minutes to leave our system. Any ship remaining after that time will be destroyed. This is impossible, Thelonious screamed. You're just one species. You can't fight the entire galaxy. We're not fighting the galaxy, Admiral. We're defending our home. There's a difference. The Defiant demonstrated that difference by firing a single shot at a nearby alien cruiser. The ship didn't just explode. It seemed to fold in on itself and disappear from reality entirely. 9 minutes, Blake said calmly. Thelonious gave the order to retreat. What was left of his fleet fled the Sol system in panic. Of the 10,000 ships that had entered, fewer than 1,000 escaped. On Europa, Alex Turner received the battle report with grim satisfaction. The alien alliance has been defeated. System defenses remain at full strength. Jake Morrison stared at the tactical display in shock. You destroyed 9,000 ships, the entire galactic fleet. We defended our home, Alex corrected. We gave them a choice. They could have left us alone. Instead, they chose to attack. What happens now? Before Alex could answer, General Hayes appeared on the main screen. All commanders, prepare for Phase 2. Long-range sensors are detecting alien reinforcements gathering at the edge of the galaxy. It seems they're not ready to give up. Alex looked at Jake. Now we show them that humanity's reach extends far beyond the Sol system. We've been preparing for this moment for 3,000 years. The galaxy is about to learn what that preparation was for. Throughout the solar system, human forces were already moving. Ships that could travel through dimensions were departing for distant star systems. The battle for Sol was over, but the war for humanity's place in the galaxy was just beginning. The aliens thought they were fighting a primitive species trapped in one star system. They were about to discover that humanity had spent 3,000 years learning to think bigger than that. And Jake Morrison, who had come looking for scrap metal, realized he was about to witness something that would change the galaxy forever. Humanity was no longer hiding. They were ready to take their place in the universe, whether the galaxy wanted them to or not. The real war was just beginning. Fleet Admiral Thelonious stood in the ruins of what had once been the galaxy's greatest military force. Only a few hundred ships remained from his original fleet of 10,000. His report to the 3 galactic powers was brief and terrifying. The humans are not what we thought, he said to the Emergency Council. They don't just have better weapons. They can control reality itself. Admiral Varanus slammed his fist on the table. Impossible. No species can control the fundamental forces of physics. Tell that to the 9,000 ships that no longer exist, Thelonious replied grimly. High Counselor Velox was studying the battle data with growing concern. Our scientists have analyzed the recordings. The humans seem to be using some kind of dimensional manipulation. They're not just advanced, they've evolved beyond our understanding. Drone Prime 7 of the Vex Collective processed the information with mechanical efficiency. The Collective requires this technology. We will deploy planet killer weapons. We will deploy reality-warping devices. We will make the humans surrender their secrets. And if they don't, asked Varanus, then we will destroy their entire solar system. Even gods can die if you hit them hard enough. The 3 powers began gathering their most destructive weapons, planet killers that could crack worlds in half, reality bombs that could tear holes in space-time itself. If conventional warfare wouldn't work against humanity, they would use weapons that could destroy entire star systems. But in the Sol system, humanity was preparing for exactly this kind of escalation. Captain Mike Stevens led a team of soldiers who were no longer entirely human. During the long sleep, volunteer troops had been enhanced with technology that merged their consciousness with quantum reality. Stevens, your team is ready for deployment, said Alex Turner. The aliens are gathering their doomsday weapons. We need to strike first. Mike nodded. His team of 12 soldiers looked normal, but they could do things that should have been impossible. They could walk through walls, survive in vacuum, and travel across the galaxy instantly by stepping through dimensions. Target locations confirmed, Mike reported. The Cortoni shipyards at Vex Prime, the Zelith weapon factories on Corlon, the Vex Collective's central processing hub on Nexus Station. Remember, Alex said, we're not there to destroy. We're there to liberate. Every species in the galaxy deserves freedom from their oppressors. Mike's team stepped through a dimensional portal and vanished. They were now traveling through space that existed between normal space, moving faster than light without using any kind of ship. At the Korthani shipyards, the workers were building new dreadnoughts, when reality suddenly shifted around them. 12 humans stepped out of thin air, and everything changed. "Attention Korthani workers," Mike announced. "You are now free. The Korthani Empire no longer controls this facility." The Korthani guards tried to fight, but their weapons couldn't touch the humans. Mike's team moved through the shipyard like ghosts, and every weapon they touched simply stopped working. Within minutes, the entire facility was under human control. But the real shock came when Mike activated a device that looked like a simple communicator. Suddenly, every worker in the shipyard could understand each other perfectly, regardless of their species or language. "This is universal translation technology," Mike explained. "One of many gifts humanity wants to share with the galaxy. The Korthani Empire has kept you apart by making you unable to communicate. Now you can work together." The same scene was playing out across the galaxy. Human strike teams were appearing at military bases, weapon factories, and government centers. But they weren't conquering. They were liberating. On Corlin, Commander Rachel Davis led her team through the Zealoth weapon factories. The slaves who had been forced to build weapons of war were suddenly free, and they were being given technology that would let them defend themselves. "The Zealoth Confederation has fallen," Rachel announced to the freed slaves. "You are no longer property. You are free beings with the right to determine your own future." Colonel Tony Walsh was leading the assault on the Vex Collective's central hub. The hive mind species had always absorbed other races into their collective consciousness. But Walsh's team had brought something that could break those mental chains. "Individual consciousness restoration is active," Walsh reported. "The Vex drones are remembering who they used to be." Across the galaxy, the three great powers were collapsing, not because humanity was destroying them, but because they were being given something they had never had before. Dr. Kevin Parker was monitoring the operation from Earth. He was humanity's chief researcher, and he understood what was really happening. "The neural enhancement is working perfectly. Our people can interface directly with quantum reality. We're not just using technology, we've become living extensions of the universe itself." The alien leaders were panicking. Admiral Veronis found that his own ships were refusing to obey his orders. The crews had been given universal translators and were talking to each other for the first time in centuries. "Sir," one of his officers said, "we've been thinking. Why are we fighting a war for an empire that treats us like slaves?" High Counselor Velox faced a similar rebellion. The Zealoth Confederation's slave races had been given weapons and technology that made them equal to their masters. Centuries of oppression were ending overnight. "This is impossible," Velox screamed. "You cannot give inferior races the same rights as us." "Why not?" asked the former slave who was now armed with human technology. "What makes you better than us?" Velox had no answer. The Vex Collective was facing the worst crisis of all. Their hive mind was breaking apart as individual personalities reasserted themselves. Drone Prime 7 was discovering that it had once been a person with its own thoughts and feelings. "I remember," it said in a voice that was no longer mechanical. "I remember being myself before you took me." General Hayes watched the reports coming in from across the galaxy. The three great powers were falling apart from within, and humanity had barely fired a shot. "The liberation is proceeding ahead of schedule," she reported to the assembled human commanders. "Resistance is minimal. Most of the galaxy's population is welcoming their freedom." But Jake Morrison was worried. He had been watching the tactical displays, and he could see that the alien powers were preparing something desperate. "Alex," he said, "they're not going to give up. Look at these readings. They're moving their planet-killer weapons toward Earth." Alex nodded grimly. "I know. They're going to try to destroy our homeworld. It's their last desperate play. Can you stop them?" "Jake, you still don't understand what humanity has become. Earth isn't just our homeworld anymore. It's part of us. We've merged with the planet itself. Attacking Earth is like attacking the fabric of reality in this region of space. The alien fleet approached Earth with their most powerful weapons, planet killers that could crack worlds, reality bombs that could tear holes in space-time. They were going to destroy the human homeworld, or die trying. But as they entered the inner solar system, they discovered that Earth was no longer just a planet. It was a living entity, protected by the consciousness of every human who had ever lived on it. Admiral Kelly Barnes commanded the planetary defense from a facility that existed in several dimensions at once. All defense systems are online. Earth is ready to defend itself. The alien fleet fired every weapon they had at the blue-green world, but Earth's biosphere had become a defensive system. The atmosphere itself deflected the planet killers. The magnetic field redirected the reality bombs back at the attackers. Impossible, screamed the alien commanders. Planets don't fight back, but Earth was fighting back, and it was winning. The battle for Earth lasted only minutes. The alien fleet was destroyed not by human weapons, but by the planet itself. Earth had become humanity's ultimate guardian, and it would not allow its children to be harmed. In the aftermath, General Hayes sent a final message to the galaxy. The age of empire is over. The age of freedom has begun. Any species that chooses oppression over liberation will face the full power of awakened humanity. The three great powers were finished. Their fleets were destroyed, their governments had collapsed, and their subject races were free. Humanity had won not through conquest, but through liberation. Jake Morrison stood with Alex Turner on the observation deck, watching as free ships from dozens of species flew through the Sol system. They were coming to thank humanity for their freedom. You didn't just win the war, Jake said. You freed the entire galaxy. That was always the plan, Alex replied. We spent 3,000 years preparing not just to defend ourselves, but to give everyone else the chance to be free. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had awakened, and they had brought freedom with them. The galaxy was quiet, for the first time in 1,000 years. The three great powers that had ruled with iron fists were gone. The Korthani Empire had crumbled when its enslaved races discovered they could work together. The Zelith Confederation had fallen when its slave species realized they were equals. The Vex Collective had dissolved when its drones remembered how to think for themselves in the Sol system. Humanity was deciding what to do next. General Hayes stood before the assembled human commanders, looking out at a changed universe. The war is over, she said. The question now is, what kind of galaxy do we want to create? Captain Dan Morgan stepped forward. He was young, but had proven himself during the liberation campaigns. General, I request permission to establish the observation corps. We need to make sure that tyranny never rises again. Hayes nodded, approved. But remember, we're not going to be rulers. We're going to be watchers. Silent guardians who ensure that freedom survives. Dr. Alan Cooper, who had spent the war developing new technologies, raised his hand. What about our relationship with the freed species? They're asking for guidance, for help rebuilding their civilizations. We'll help them, Hayes decided. But we won't control them. Every species must choose its own path. Jake Morrison was still trying to understand his role in all this. He had come to the Sol system looking for scrap metal, and had witnessed the rebirth of galactic civilization. Alex Turner found him standing alone on the observation deck, thinking about going back to salvage work. Alex asked with a smile. Jake shook his head. I don't think I could go back to my old life after seeing all this. Alex, what you've done, you've changed everything. We've given everyone the chance to change themselves, Alex corrected. That's all we ever wanted to do. Throughout the galaxy, the freed species were indeed changing. On former Korthani worlds, different races were working together to build new societies. The universal translators that humanity had provided meant that for the first time in centuries, everyone could understand each other. Lieutenant Nicole Price was leading a team of human advisors on the planet Corlin. The former slaves of the Zealoth Confederation were trying to build their own government, and they had asked for help. Remember, Nicole told her team, we're not here to tell them what to do. We're here to help them discover what they want to do. The Corlonians were struggling with the concept of democracy. After centuries of being told what to do, the idea of making their own decisions was frightening. What if we make the wrong choice? Asked one of the former slaves. Then you'll learn from your mistakes and make better choices next time, Nicole replied. That's what freedom means. The right to succeed or fail on your own terms. In the Vex Collective's former territory, something even more remarkable was happening. The beings who had been turned into drones were remembering who they used to be. They were rediscovering their individual personalities, their hopes, their dreams. Commander Rachel Davis was working with them to establish new societies based on individual choice rather than hive mind control. You don't all have to think the same way, she explained to a group of former drones. You can disagree with each other. You can have different opinions. That's what makes you individuals. Back in the Sol system, Captain Dan Morgan was establishing the observation course. His job was to watch the galaxy and make sure that no new tyrants rose to power, but he would do it from the shadows, never interfering unless absolutely necessary. The galaxy must learn to govern itself, he said to his team. We'll only act if someone tries to conquer everyone else. The observation corps set up hidden monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. They watched, they listened, and they waited. Humanity had learned patience during their long sleep, and they would use that patience to guard the galaxy's freedom. Dr. Cooper was working on a different kind of project. He was developing new technologies that would help the freed species defend themselves. Not weapons of conquest, but tools of protection. Every species should have the right to defend their homeworld, he explained to his research team, but no species should have the power to conquer others. The technology he developed was elegant in its simplicity. It could create powerful defensive shields around planets, but it couldn't be used to attack other worlds. It gave every species the ability to protect themselves without threatening their neighbors. As the months passed, the galaxy began to stabilize. New governments formed based on cooperation rather than conquest. Trade networks developed that benefited everyone involved. For the first time in galactic history, war was becoming rare, but humanity remained vigilant. They had learned that freedom was fragile, and that there would always be those who sought to take it away. Admiral Kelly Barnes was monitoring the situation from Earth. The planet itself had become part of humanity's consciousness, and through it, they could sense the emotional state of the entire galaxy. The fear is fading, she reported. People are beginning to hope again. They're starting to believe that peace is possible. Jake Morrison decided to stay in the Sol system. He had seen what humanity could accomplish when they worked together for 3,000 years, and he wanted to be part of that future. What will you do now? Alex asked him. I want to help, Jake replied. I want to be part of making sure this new galaxy works. Maybe I can't interface with quantum reality like you can, but I can still contribute. Alex smiled. There's always room for people who want to help others be free. Lisa Grant and Carlos Martinez, Jake's former crew members, had made similar decisions. Lisa was training to be a pilot for the observation corps, while Carlos was working with human engineers to develop new technologies for the freed species. We came here looking for treasure, Carlos said. Turns out, we found something much more valuable. General Hayes made one final announcement to the galaxy. Her message was broadcast to every world, every ship, every being that had been freed from oppression. Humanity is returning to Sol, she said. We will not seek to rule over you, we will not try to control your decisions, but we will watch, we will remember, and if tyranny ever rises again, we will wake once more. The message was simple, but its meaning was clear. The galaxy was free, but that freedom was protected. Humanity would remain in the shadows, silent, guardians ensuring that the Age of Empire would never return, as the human fleet began to withdraw from the galaxy's core worlds. They left behind something precious, hope, for the first time in centuries. Beings across the galaxy believed that they could control their own destinies. The monitoring stations were hidden, but always active. The observation cores watched from the darkness, ready to act if needed, and, in the Sol system, humanity settled into their new role as the galaxy's silent protectors. Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the Europa station, looking out at the stars. The galaxy looked the same as it had when he first arrived, but everything had changed. Every point of light in the sky now represented a world where beings were free to choose their own paths. "Do you think it will last?" he asked Alex. "Freedom. It will last as long as people are willing to defend it," Alex replied. "And now, every species in the galaxy knows that they're not alone in that defense." The galaxy had trembled when humanity awoke. Now it was stable, peaceful, and free. The Age of Empire was over. The Age of Cooperation had begun, and in the quiet of the Sol system, humanity kept watch, ready to wake again if their vigilance was ever needed. They had learned that the greatest strength was not in conquest, but in knowing when to use your power and when to hold back. The galaxy was free, and humanity would make sure it stayed that way. The stars shone brightly in the eternal darkness, and for the first time in millennia, they shone on a galaxy at peace.